Good evening everyone. So today we are going to begin with colonialism in China. ठीक है, colonialism in Africa से भी हम start कर सकते थे, but since मतलब we'll be able to sort of try and wrap up this whole topic in one class. नहीं तो usually होता है कि colonialism in Africa होता है, फिर colonialism in China थोड़ा सा एक staggered way में हो जाता है. Plus time wise also colonialism in China it begins in 1840, whereas specifically in the modern era or like in the recent era it is 1876 onwards where your colonialism in Africa happens. So we will be discussing colonialism in Africa in the next class. In today's class we are going to discuss colonialism in China, that is 1840 onwards, right? So first of all, to begin with this we need to understand the map. Okay, so there are certain areas which I want you to focus upon. First thing that you need to focus upon, it is, can you notice Taiwan, the big Taiwan that is there, right? मतलब थोड़ा सा southeast side पे, so that's Taiwan. मतलब the purpose is just to tell you that there is Taiwan, okay, in the Pacific Ocean. Then on the left hand side of Taiwan you see this Hong Kong. So Hong Kong, it is an island. Above Hong Kong you see a name which is a name of an area which is called Guangzhou, Guangzhou. So it has another name which is known as Canton, Canton. So Guangzhou or Canton, they are the one and the same thing. So in our notes when we write Canton Port, so that means the port of Guangzhou or the area around Canton Port, it is known as Guangzhou. Okay. Then we move further up on the right hand side. There you see Korea, right? So Korea, which is at present divided into North Korea and South Korea. So Korea is there. Obviously Japan on the right hand side. On the left hand side of Japan you see Sea of Japan. This Sea of Japan, it is also known by the name of East China Sea because it is on the eastern side of China, so therefore East China Sea. Okay, so Sea of Japan or East China Sea, one and the same thing. Then on the left hand side of this Sea of Japan you see Manchuria. Okay, so this Manchuria is also very, very important in world history. It was a very coal rich area, very mineral rich area, and Japan, given the geography, the Japan's imperialism or its empire building exercise, it will manifest itself in Korea, it will manifest itself in Manchuria majorly because uska Japan ka backyard ho jata hai, right? So therefore this is how we are going to begin. So this is the map, right? Also notice the boundary between Russia and China, so it will come into picture. Later on, when we move on to 1931, this map will come into operation. So I mentioned that Manchuria, it is important. So just notice it that this is your Manchuria, and we see that Manchuria has been given a different name which is known as Manchukuo. Okay, so we'll be referring to it, right? So that is what there. Plus second thing which I want you to notice is USSR. So USSR ka area jo hai aap dekhenge on the right hand side of Manchukuo, the USSR, it is coming till that very down thing, okay, around Vladivostok. So you see USSR or Russia, and there the confluence point between Korea, between Russia and between China, it is this port of Vladivostok, right? So ये जो modern boundary है, this is the boundary between your China and Russia, इसको हम ध्यान में रखेंगे. We'll also be talking about Sakhalin Island. So on the right hand side, that is above Japan, and on the right hand side of Russia you can see the Sakhalin Island. So they will also be in talk when we discuss it. In this map you can also focus on Manchuria and then your South Manchuria, and below South Manchuria what do you see? Port Arthur, Liaotung Peninsula, and then Shantung Province, and below Shantung you have Kiachou Islands. So basically ये सारा एरिया कुछ नहीं है, ये सब यहीं पे ही है, कोई कहीं नहीं जा रहा, ठीक है? So just that when we use these terms so we don't get confused. So I'll again mention. Let us begin from the right hand side. You have that Sakhalin Islands. Then on the left hand side you have Russia. Take a look at the boundary of Russia and this Manchuria. Manchuria, it is part of China. Then South Manchuria is there. On the right hand side of South Manchuria, that's your Korea, right? On the left hand side of Korea in South Manchuria there is this Liaotung Peninsula which is having a port which is known as Port Arthur. Below Port Arthur you have this Shantung Province, and around Shantung Province you have an island which is known as Kiachou Islands. Right? Further below when you go, you see Taiwan or Formosa, one and the same thing is there, right? So therefore, the purpose here was to get you acquainted with the map of China. ठीक है? तो अब इधर आ जाओ, अब start करते हैं. So basically our focus is colonialism in China. After this class, we should be able to answer certain questions. For example, these are certain questions which we will be able to answer. That is, what is century of humiliation in China? This century of humiliation was from 1840s till your 1940s. The second aspect is this is like very basic, what is an international colony? So we'll be taking care of it. How colonialism impacted China? So this question, the first question and third question, they are more or less the same. How Japan became an imperial power, right? So therefore, importance of Japan is there in the current affairs as well. So therefore, it is very valid from the perspective of international relations, from the perspective of a profile of a IFS officer, or otherwise also that we take care of Japan, we take care of China when we study world history. Okay? So that is going to be the focus. Now, coming to your China. So what was the story of China? So let us begin with it. So colonialism China, it has a particular background. So I'll write it down and then I'll explain. Right, so basically I've written something, let me explain, after that I'll give you time to understand it. So the Portuguese, they found a new route to China in 1514, okay, just a very brief background around it. So trade used to happen with China, the Europeans, they used to trade with China, specifically the Venice traders and Genoa traders, they used to trade with China through the traditional or through the ancient trade routes. Those ancient trade routes, they went through Constantinople, which is modern day Istanbul, which is the capital of Turkey, right? So land routes were there, plus sea routes were there. So trade used to happen through traditional trade routes. But in 1453, one small incident happened, small nahi, but काफी बड़ा incident था, that your Ottoman Empire, it defeated the Byzantine Empire, which was having control over Constantinople, right? So Constantinople, it is like, it's like the gateway. It's like the gateway between the East and the West. It is the confluence point of the Middle East, of the Western Europe, and of the East, right? So basically, Constantinople बिल्कुल बीच में पड़ता है, ठीक है? So after that, what Ottoman Empire did? Ottoman Empire blockaded all trade which these Venetian traders and the Genoese traders, Venice, Genoa, ये जो traders ये जो trade करते थे, उस सबको बंद कर दिया. They blockaded all the trade which Europe was doing with China, with India. And as a result, after 1453, there was a quest for finding a new route to the east. The Western Europeans, they wanted to find a new route to India. They wanted to find a new route to the China. They wanted to find a new route to the East Indies, that is your Indonesia, because Indonesia was very famous for spices, right? And spices, they had great demand in the West. Why the spices had great demand in the West? Because the climate in the West was very cold, and in your winters, you know, if they had to eat meat, right? मतलब जो अंग्रेज हैं वो तो non-veg खाते हैं, so if they had to eat meat, then it required, you know, decent amount of spices, उसको spices में करके उस तरीके से करते थे, otherwise वो eatable नहीं होता था, ठीक है? तो उस तरीके से स्पाइसी का बहुत डिमांड था. एंड मतलब इनफैक्ट जैसे आज के टाइम पे क्या फेमस है, आज के टाइम पे ये फेमस है दैट द वेस्टर्न फूड इट इज ब्लैंड, एंड द वेस्टर्न यूरोपियन पीपल दे फाइंड द इंडियन फूड टू बी वेरी स्पाइसी. दे आर लाइक, ठीक है, व्हेन दे कम टू इंडिया, वेरी स्पाइसी. बट द पॉइंट इज, मतलब around the time period of your 1600s or 1500s, the Western European food was as spicy as Indian food, right? So later on, they, you know, for whatever reasons, they changed their taste or whatever, jo bhi raha. Okay. Anyways, so there was demand for the Chinese tea, right? And there was demand for the spices. There was demand for the Indian textiles. So that was the and a huge amount of profits they can be earned if trade with the East can be done. So therefore, around the time period of 1453 onwards, these voyagers, they started, you know, adventurers, they started trying to you know, find these new lands. So for example, Columbus, he found your Haiti or Central America, right? And he thought for some time that he has found Asia, but he was wrong. Okay, Amerigo, later on he discovered, he proved that your Asia nahi hai, this is America, right? And that's the story behind you know, American Indians. Okay, so that's why they call them Indians, because they thought, Columbus thought that he has found Asia and India would be nearby. Then 1498, Columbus, you know, he around the Cape of Good Hope, he found India, and then later on, similarly, the Portuguese and the Spanish, they were the ones who were leading. The East was being dominated by the Portuguese traders. So Portuguese, they found the new route to China in 1514. That is a very brief background. आपको कोई लिखने की जरूरत नहीं है, just for this purpose of understanding, right? And what is the intent of the Portuguese? The Portuguese, they want to do trade, right? And when they want to do trade, they would be establishing a trading center. What is a trading center? Trading center is nothing. For example, if the Portuguese, they want to trade with China, so they would find a port. They found Canton Port, and around Canton Port, they would be establishing their warehouses. They will be establishing their small offices. There, you know, the Portuguese people, they can be stationed, and you know, they can interact with the merchants of China. The merchants of China, they will get the Chinese tea or other products to these merchants, and then these merchants, they will sail off those products to the Europe, right? So therefore, that is a trading center. आपका basically office, आपका warehouse, जहाँ पे आप वो रखोगे, ठीक है? For example, in your modern Indian history, when you read about, you know, this trading post, you read about trading centers. So ये trading centers यही थे. That's how gradually Calcutta became Calcutta. So they began very small, at a very small level. They built their trading center in Calcutta, the Britishers. After that, they fortified their trading center in Calcutta. That is why Fort Williams came into existence. And over a period of time, as development took place around Fort Williams, the city of Calcutta developed. Anyways, Coming back. So basically, the Portuguese, they are setting up the trading center at Canton in 1557. ठीक है, जो लिखा हुआ है सिर्फ उतना काम का चीज है, बाकी जो मैं verbally समझा रहा हूँ, if you want to note down something, you can note down, otherwise not that important. ठीक है. Now, coming to the third point, so by the time of 1713, most of the European powers, they were trading with China, right? So trade relations had been established by most of the European powers. United States of America, after the Second Treaty of Paris of 1783, when they became independent, so they also independently established trading relations with China. This is a brief background, a mix of modern Indian history and your world history. So East India Company, which colonized India, so that very same East India Company, it was formed in 1600, and it was this particular company which had monopoly over trade of Britain with China till 1833. That is, whatever trade that will happen between Britain and China, it will be conducted by the East India Company. So therefore, when we are discussing, this background, so this should be in mind. And after your 1833, the first Opium War, it takes place around the time period of 1840. So still your East India Company will be relevant, although it does not have a monopoly. Then what we have is your China followed a policy of seclusion. China followed a policy of seclusion. ठीक है, अच्छा एक सेकेंड, मेरे को एक चीज क्या कहते हैं आइडेंटिफाई करनी है, आप इतना लिखो, उसके बाद फिर देखते हैं एक सेकेंड. राइट, यू राइट दिस डाउन. Right, so I hope you have written it down. Yeah, okay, ठीक है. तो anyways, तो आप समझते हैं. So as I was telling you that East India Company, it had monopoly over trade with China till 1833. After that, other British businesses, they can also do trade. However, China soon adopted or followed policy of seclusion. What is this policy of seclusion? Policy of seclusion means that we are going to be secluded from the rest of the world. We want limited interaction. Kaise? For example, there will not be any political interaction. We do not want any diplomatic ties with the West. Second aspect, we will minimize our contact with the West. We do not welcome foreigners. The foreigners, they can be at Canton. At Canton, you do the trading, but otherwise, we don't want you entering China. Next, trade is allowed only at the Canton port. There can be multiple ports. In any country, there are multiple ports, but China said that you can trade, but only through Canton port. Plus, you can trade only with 13 state-appointed traders with whom you can interact, with whom you can exchange goods, right? Otherwise, we want very limited contact. What was the reason for this policy of seclusion? The reason for this policy of seclusion was that, first of all, as these the Chinese, they were aware of what is happening in India, and is tarike se. So therefore, first of all, they over a period of time, they started developing a fear of the strong navies of the West. They thought that we should minimize contact. The minimization of contact, it will result in lesser conflict. So basically, there was a fear of the strong navies of the West, and that is why the Chinese, they were a little wary, a little cautious about these Western powers, right? So that is the first point, fear of the strong navies of the West. कि इनसे कहीं कुछ conflict हुआ, तो there can be these people, they can defeat me in a war at sea, and then maybe they can enter into China and do colonialism or something like that. Second aspect is that they were concerned because of this export of Christianity into China, which was majorly Buddhist. So the Britishers, the French, everyone, all these Western powers, they believe that they have this role of civilizing the rest of the world. And as part of this cultural colonialism, right, they wanted, what is colonialism? Colonialism is simple, that it is domination and exploitation by the foreigners of the economy, society, culture, polity of a particular land. right? So therefore it is domination and exploitation by the foreigners. And one part of that cultural domination is export of language, export, like right now we are conducting this lecture in English language. Right now we are wearing Western clothes, right? So what is this? This is nothing but cultural colonialism. We have been permanently colonized, right? So anyways, so second aspect is export of Christianity. So that is also part of cultural colonialism. The Western powers, they wanted to do, you know, missionary activities. They wanted to spread Christianity to the rest of the world, right? And when they did that in China, so therefore the Chinese, they became a little wary, and therefore they started following the policy of seclusion. They were unhappy that why these foreign powers, they are trying to, you know, change the culture of China, why they are trying to export Christianity into China. So therefore this is the background, right, of colonialism in China. And the second aspect is the economic background. So therefore this is what is happening. Now next aspect is that what were the economic relationship between your China and the rest of the world. The economic relationship, and usko hum discuss kar sakte hain as a reason for the first opium war of 1840 to 42. So I'll give you 15-20 more seconds for writing this down अगर आपने अभी तक नहीं लिखा है, and after that I'll be deleting it. ठीक है, so इसको आप लिख लीजिए. I'll give you 30 seconds. तो इसको आप लिख लीजिए, ठीक है, and then we'll move on and we'll discuss the background of the first opium war of 1840 to 1842. From where the century of humiliation it is beginning. So we will see that how China is being humiliated. Okay, so I hope you would have written it down. Keep the questions at the back of your mind. If you have not written the questions, no worries. Right? Now we are discussing the topic of colonialism in China, right? And उसके अंदर एक topic आता है आपका, which is known as your first opium war. So I'll write down the reasons. After that, we will discuss, and then we'll move forward in that particular direction. So basically what we have written, first reason is that British had policy of mercantilism. Go back to your American Revolution, always interconnect. In the American Revolution also there was this issue of mercantilism or mercantile capitalism. What is mercantilism? What is this policy of mercantilism? The Britishers, they would try to maximize their balance of trade. What is balance of trade? It is the net of exports minus imports in value terms. So therefore the Britishers would want to maximize the profits from the trade. That is, when you are exporting something, then you are earning something. When you are importing something, then you are losing money. And at that point of time, international trade, it was being run on gold. So the British policy of mercantilism, it meant maximizing the positive balance of trade, maximizing exports, minimizing imports in value terms, so as there is minimum outflow of gold from Britain to the rest of the world. But it was an era where China, India, they were the powerful countries, they were the richer countries. So ultimately, the Britishers, they had negative balance of trade with China. Why? Because the Britishers, they were buying the Chinese goods, whereas China, it did not need anything from the West. So the net result is the Britishers, they are coming, they are buying the Chinese goods, they have to give gold, they resent it, they want China to buy some British goods. China says, I don't need anything from you. If Britishers had been able to sell some of their goods to the Chinese, then the outgo of gold will be relatively less. Because what is the outgo of gold? The imports minus exports is the outgo of gold. When you are importing something, you are buying something. When you are exporting something, you are selling something, right? So therefore the net is the amount of gold. So in value terms. So the British policy of mercantilism, it implied maximization of positive balance of trade by maximizing exports and minimizing imports. But China was rich and did not need anything from the West. This hurt the balance of trade of Britain, right? There was outgo of gold. Okay, that is what we are saying. That is, there was outgo or outflow of gold from Britain to China. Okay, what was the solution? The Britishers, they found a very innovative solution. Especially your East India Company was there, right? So they found a very positive, very different kind of solution, and they began illegal export of Indian opium, that is Bengali opium, to China. It is an illegal export. The word illegal is there, right? So they began an illegal export of this Indian opium to China, so that the Britishers, so that Britain has to pay in less gold, or the Britishers, they have to pay less gold for the imports, right? For the Chinese goods. So they have to pay less gold for imports from China, because it will be offset. The price, jo opium hoga, if you are selling opium, then it will reduce the amount which the Britishers, they have to pay to the Chinese. This soon became a conflict. और इसके बड़े फायदे भी थे. इंडिया से भी एक रिलेशन था. What was the relationship with India? The relationship with India was that this particular illegal trade of opium, it made the Indian colony also profitable. कैसे? They will be, Indian colony profitable हो रहा है. कैसे? That first of all you have India as a colony, or in your, when you have India as a colony, then you can utilize the Indian opium, and you are obviously getting the Indian opium at a very cheaper price, right? And then you are able to sell that Indian opium abroad at a higher price. So therefore your Indian colony became profitable, right, for the Britishers, right? They are able to extract, earn more money out of some Indian product. ठीक? तो इस तरीके से चल रहा है. We have a question, sir. What is the difference between colonialism and imperialism? Ketan is asking that. Okay. चलो इस टॉपिक को भी डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. So what you can do is, इसी में ही जस्ट ऐसा बैकग्राउंड एक आप नेक्स्ट पेज पे एक नोट बना लो. दिस पोर्शन इट विल कंटिन्यू, एंड यहाँ पे एक जैसे आपका अगर पेज चल रहा है तो उस पे इस टाइप से एक स्टार मार्क करके, ठीक है, नोट्स और साइड नोट्स करके, ठीक है, तो इस तरीके से आप बना लो. एंड हियर यू कैन राइट डाउन इंपीरियलिज्म वर्सेस कोलोनियलिज्म. सो व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस बिटवीन इंपीरियलिज्म एंड कोलोनियलिज्म? ओके. This is the relationship between imperialism and colonialism. That is imperialism. It is a subset of colonialism. Imperialism, it is a subset of colonialism. अगर मैं इसको I बोल देता हूं या IM बोल देता हूं, ठीक है? So basically your imperialism it is a subset of colonialism. That is why if anyone is using colonialism and imperialism interchangeably, then that is fine. Why? Because imperialism is a subset of colonialism. Okay? When does, okay, but when specifically you say that this is imperialism, when can you use the term imperialism for colonialism? So when can you use the term imperialism interchangeably with colonialism? In these three scenarios. For example, when there is use of military, okay, then you can use the term imperialism. Okay, so when the foreign country, it will start using military for achieving its objectives in a colony, in a foreign territory, then you can call it imperialism. Second aspect is when there is political annexation of the territory. For example, after 1858, the Britishers, they annexed India. India became part of the British Empire after 1858. So what was that? That is imperialism in operation, right? So when there is annexation of territory, when you merge, when you say that this territory now it belongs to British Empire, then it is your imperialism. Or when there is political control, if there is not full annexation, but still you are establishing political control over that territory. That is, political control is established over the colony via or by making a country a protectorate or a puppet state. What is a protectorate? So यहाँ पे स्टार मार्क करके लिख सकते हैं. The meaning of the word protectorate is when a foreign power takes control or takes a particular country under its protection. What is a protectorate? When a foreign power takes a country under its military protection. Okay, that means I am its protector. It's a way of colonialism. Plus, it begins to control the foreign policy and the military of this country. So, for example, when Korea was converted into a protectorate by Japan, then Korea will not have its own military. The Japanese, they will protect Korea. Plus, Korea cannot have any independent foreign policy, and the foreign policy of Korea, it will be with Japan. This happened in 1905. So, therefore, this is a protectorate, right? What do you mean by puppet state? It is automatically understood. A puppet state is basically a territory which is formally independent, but who will be the leader of that country? That is decided by a foreign power. So basically, for all legal purposes, in every way, a puppet state, it is independent, but the government, it is decided by a foreign power. So then you say that there is a puppet regime in that particular state. So is it not imperialism? Yes, it is, because there is some kind of a political control over, and if you have, especially if you have converted that particular country into a puppet state by using military or by using threat of military, then it can be called imperialism. Then it can be called imperialism. Another aspect comes, isko ek baar band kar do. Another aspect comes that why does a country shift towards imperialism? Why does a colonial power shift to imperialism? So why does a colonial power shifts to imperialism? A colonial power shift towards imperialism introduction is, imperialism, it basically implies establishment of a stronger control over a colony. When you are using military, you are establishing, why you are using military? Because you want to establish stronger control over the colony. When you are taking over the, when you are doing political annexation, that India is now part of British Empire, then you are establishing a stronger control over the colony of India. When you are saying that, when Japan is saying that Korea is our protectorate, then you are establishing a stronger control. When you are taking over some kind of a sovereign function, for example, foreign policy आपने control में ले लिया, या फिर budget making आपने अपने control में ले लिया, then what you are doing, for example, when you study the, when you are taking over some sovereign function of a country, ठीक है, तो उसमें भी क्या है, you are establishing some kind of a stronger control over the colony. So therefore, what is it? It is for your stronger control. ठीक है, so imperialism, it implies establishment of stronger control over a colony. कोई ऐसा क्यों करेगा? कोई ऐसा इसलिए करेगा because use of military etc. all of these things are costly. ठीक है, all of these things are costly, so no one wants to, these are the costs of colonialism, no one wants to do that, right? मेरे को सिर्फ पैसा आता रहे, मेरे को इंडिया से कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, मेरे को नहीं करना colonialism, ठीक है, मेरे को imperialism नहीं करना, मेरे को बस पैसा आता रहे, ठीक? So therefore it is done when the colonial powers fear for loss of benefits from the colony, right? And this loss of benefits from the colony, how can they happen? For example, if there is a nationalist struggle in the colony, if the Indians, they are saying Angrezon Bharat chodo, if the Indians are saying Britishers go back, East India Company go back, we will not allow you to exploit us, then the East India Company might use an army, they might start doing political annexation. So one example can be when there is a nationalist struggle. Live example, 1857 revolt in India, and after this in 1858 the British state, it said that the company rule is ending in India and now India, it is part of British Empire. So therefore annexation happened. Second aspect can be when there is threat of other foreign powers replacing the existing power. For example, in South India, there was a rivalry between the East India Company of the British and the French East India Company. And as a result, Carnatic Wars were fought. The first Carnatic War, 1746 to 48, second Carnatic War, 1749 to 54, third Carnatic War, 1756 to 63. So therefore, there what do we see? East India Company, that is the British East India Company versus the French East India Company. Why they are using this military? And why consequently they are establishing greater control over South India? Because they fear that French, they will replace the British and they will get the trade benefits with India. Third aspect, when there is threat of any domestic kingdom. For example, when you discuss the Mysore wars, the first Mysore war, the second Mysore war, the third Mysore war, the fourth Mysore war. So therefore, the Mysore wars, they began from 1766, they lasted till 1799, right? If I'm right, yes. So therefore, Mysore, the state of Mysore, which is a domestic kingdom, versus the East India Company. So therefore, East India Company feared a domestic rival. And therefore, it is fighting, it is using military against your Mysore. Why? So it can continue the benefits. So it can continue the benefits, right? So therefore, this is how it's all a game of economics, right? And this is why your imperialism, it is done. Yes, there can be a monarch who wants to do empire building. So that can also be a reason. Okay, so another aspect can be, so if this is your one, then second you can write down, second example can also be that, for empire building. But this will be a concern by an emperor, right? So that is personality question comes that, mera empire hona chahiye. Napoleon saying my empire should be there, right? So therefore, so this can be, example can be Napoleon. Right? So therefore, this is how this is the relationship between imperialism and colonialism. Ultimately, what is the situation? Simple point is, what is a colony? From the colony, you benefit economically. ठीक है? तो basically, अगर उन benefits को threat हो रहा है, then I'll make my control stronger and I'll move towards imperialism. But can people use imperialism and colonialism interchangeably? Yes. Yes, they can, right? Because imperialism, it is a subset of colonialism. Right? When they want to continue the colonial benefits, they start using military or they will do political annexation, they will take budget under control, they will convert a particular territory into its protectorate, etc., etc., etc. Right? Ultimately, game paise ka hai. Right? Is it outflow of gold similar to bullionism by Ravi? So bullionism आप check कर लीजिए, bullion को तो gold ही बोलते हैं, ठीक है? Bullionism क्या है तो I'm not aware of the term, but हाँ, मतलब outflow of gold हो रहा है तो मेरे ख्याल से it is मतलब it would be against bullionism, एंड अगर इनफ्लो ऑफ गोल्ड हो रहा है तो आई थिंक इट विल बी, सो बुलियनिज्म वुड, मतलब जो सिंपल इंग्लिश है, इट वुड रिप्रेजेंट फोकस ऑन गोल्ड, ठीक है, दैट इज बुलियनिज्म. सो आउटफ्लो ऑफ गोल्ड एंड इनफ्लो ऑफ गोल्ड, फोकस ऑन गोल्ड, दैट इज द कॉन्सेप्ट. Then, sir, if time permits, can you please briefly discuss about Renassa? Some students are asking about it. ठीक है, ठीक है, तो अब ये है. So this is your imperialism. You can write it down. हाँ, आप चलो इसको लिख लो, फिर उसके बाद Renassa वगैरह भी डिस्कस करते हैं. तो एक ये सेपरेट आपका हो गया. आप इस वाले मतलब यहाँ से यहाँ फोकस कर दो. ये तो दिखाई दिया था, यहाँ से दिखा दीजिए. So I'll give you a minute to write this down. वो ऑन राइट कर दीजिए, मतलब सेकेंड हाफ दिखा दीजिए. मतलब ये वाला पोर्शन दिखा दीजिए. दिखा दिया. So I hope the doubt it is clear that what is the relationship between imperialism and colonialism. Always remember that imperialism has certain, उधर ही दिखा दीजिए, अभी कुछ बच्चों ने नहीं लिखा होगा. Always remember that their imperialism it incurs more cost. ठीक है, आपको ज्यादा कॉस्ट इनकर करना पड़ता है इंपीरियलिज्म की वजह से. ठीक है, ये आपने दिखा दिया था पहले. ठीक है, फिर भी दिखा दीजिए एक बार, अगर किसी का रह गया हो तो. उधर दिखा दी, मैं ये डिलीट कर रहा हूं. ठीक है, तो आई होप लिख लिया होगा. ठीक है, अब चलो ऑफ द ट्रैक थोड़ा सा हो ही गए, तो डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. ज्योति इज आस्किंग, सर व्हाट इज मोर एक्सट्रीम फिनोमिनन, इंपीरियलिज्म और कोलोनियलिज्म? लेट द स्टूडेंट आंसर. Let the student answer. The rest of the student, they can answer the question of Jyoti. Jyoti is asking, what is more extreme phenomenon, imperialism or colonialism? So let the other students answer, and the batch coordinators, they can collate the answer and they can say. Now let us move on to Renassa. ठीक है, तो क्योंकि अब थोड़ा सा ऑफ टॉपिक हो गए, पहले पिछली क्लास में भी आया था. Renassa क्या है? ठीक है, कोई दिक्कत नहीं, ले लो। मैं तो ये लिख रहा हूँ, अभी मैं कुछ भूल नहीं रहा। ये देखो क्या कलाकारी कर दी मैंने। ठीक है, और यार जल्दी पढ़ाना तो फिर ठीक है, तो जल्दी लिख दिया मैंने, अभी तो समझा देते हैं, आप लोग ले लेना। क्या है, देखो रेनेसां इट हैपेंड इन 14th century onwards in Western Europe. ठीक है, सो व्हाट इज द बैकग्राउंड? बैकग्राउंड इज दिस, व्हाट काइंड ऑफ सोसाइटी इट वाज। फ्यूडलिज्म वाज देयर इन वेस्टर्न यूरोप, ठीक है, and like we have studied feudalism in case of France, so similarly feudalism was there in the Western Europe. there was no opportunity of any social mobility. Matlab, when we discuss France, we are in 1789, some trade is happening, but here we are discussing 1300s. So there was no opportunity of any social mobility. That is, there was no education. Koi education nahi. No study of history, no study of geography, no UPSC syllabus, nothing. Life chill. Only non-farming occupation that was available was become a priest. That is the only non-farming occupation available in society was, you cannot become anything. Kuch aur hai nahi. You can at max become a priest, right? Or you can join the army, okay, as a spoil. That is it. Church became exploitative, so the society was highly religious, and there was domination of the church in the life of the people. And over a period of time, church became exploited, and it extracted money for every ritual, right? So basically, if you have, if you have committed a sin, you are confessing, paise leke aao, okay? If you are marrying, paise leke aao, right? Once a year confession was made compulsory. कि ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता आपने कोई पाप ना किया हो इस साल. ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है? How is it possible that you have not committed any sin? Once a year confession is compulsory, and once you do the confession, after that you have to pay money, because वो बताएंगे कि फिर भैया आपने तो you have committed a great sin, you have to do A B C D, ठीक है, and उसके लिए पैसे लेके आओ, right? So therefore, church became exploitative and extracted money for rituals. Church also became violent. Whenever anyone would oppose the church, then church would say कि इसके अंदर माता आ गई, इसको जला दो. मतलब she is a witch, or some Satan has come into this man, he needs to be burnt alive, right? For example, Bruno was burnt alive because he talked about some scientific principles. Anyways, economy kaisi thi? Economy was backward and agrarian, no or very limited trade, huge amount of poverty was there. Polity, kings and nobles, they ruled. No democracy was there, no individual rights were there, no rule of law was there. Overall, it is a miserable life, right? Overall, it was a miserable life, and people wondered that why we have this miserable life. Church used to answer, you're born to be unhappy. It is a test by Jesus. Fine. Now, what is Renaissance? How did Renaissance begin? So actually, trade profits via trade with the East, it led to hope of better life. Right? So as your trade developed, and trade developed between Italy, Venice, Genoa, and India, China, right? And therefore the merchants there, there was a Medici family, for example, so they became rich. And when this richness came into the society of Italy, so therefore gradually a hope developed, a hope for better life. So therefore Renaissance, where did it begin? It began in Italy. Why? Because Italy dominated the trade with the East, right? So now suddenly hope came that okay, a better life is available. Role of money became important in the society. In the earlier economy, there was no role of money as such, right? It was a land-based economy. So therefore, Renaissance began in Italy. And what is the quest for Renaissance? The quest for Renaissance began, these people wondered that in the ancient Roman civilization, we were very rich. In the ancient Greek civilization, we were very rich. So how our system has decayed so much? And can we achieve the glory of the past? And what is the root, or what is the source? The source is, if we study the ancient scriptures, then maybe we are able to analyze that what kind of polity they had, what kind of economy they had, what kind of system they had. So therefore, the focus began with going back to the ancient past. That is, study of ancient scriptures so as to find reason for richness of the ancient Roman and Greek civilization. That is, they are trying to find new ideas. And this quest of new ideas, it moved outside of the ancient scriptures to other areas. They started thinking on their own as well. So soon the quest for new ideas, it spread to other areas. What was the goal? Simple goal, improve life of man, right? And life of man, it relates to what kind of economics is there in the society, what kind of social conditions are there in the society, whether there is feudalism or not, what kind of religion is there in the society, is our religion pure, is our religion good, or religion has become a tool of our oppression, what is the kind of polity in our society, is it autocracy, it is dictatorship, it is what, or we have a democracy, kya hai? Basically democracy to pata hi nahi kya ho sakta hai, right? So therefore they started wondering. So what is the goal for this wondering? The goal for this wondering is improve the life of man in all the domains, in the domain of science, in the domain of religion, in the domain of society, in the domain of economics, right? What is the tool? The tool that they deploy is reason and logic. That is, they say that nature, it follows logic, nature, it follows reason. There is something great about nature. And what is that great? Logic, reason. So we are going to follow logic and reason to find answers to our problems, our political problems, our social problems, our economic problems. We are going to find answers. And what is our tool? Our tool is reason and logic. If the church is saying earth is flat, earth is not round, earth is flat, we will not believe it. Proof leke aao. If the church is saying that earth is at the center of the universe and the sun, it rotates around us, they're like, we will still find some proof. We need to have some proofs. So therefore, merely because the church is saying this, we are not going to agree. So we are going to follow reason and logic. And areas, when these tools, they are, and this goal, it is deployed in different areas, these are the results. When this tool of reason and logic with the purpose of improving life of man is applied in the domain of religion, what you find, the result was establishment of Protestant religion or the Protestant churches. This happened in 16th century, that is 1500s. When it was deployed in the domain of economy, there was growth of capitalism. That is, instead of feudalism, we should have equality of opportunity, we should have profit motive, everyone should be allowed to become rich. When it was applied to science, you had scientific revolution, right? So therefore, science in the domain of, for example, the human body was dissected to find out how do the blood circulation works, right? Aapka kaun sa purza kahan pe hai? In the domain of astronomy, telescope was developed. It was decoded that, okay, the sun is at the center of our solar system and universe, it is infinite. These kind of things, that earth is not flat, earth is round. These kind of things, they came into operation. Newton gave his 3 laws of motion, right? So when it was applied, logic and reason was applied to science, it resulted in scientific revolution of 17th and 18th century. When this very reason and logic, they were for the purposes of improvement of the life of man, when they were applied in the domain of polity, it resulted in enlightenment. So when we have discussed enlightenment, when we discussed the American Revolution, we discussed the French Revolution, that is rule of law, equality before law, democracy, self-government, republic, these ideas. That is, if we have these things, then the life of man in the domain of polity will improve. We'll have a better government. So therefore, Renaissance is the mother of all of these things which are happening in the society, and this process was a long process, long journey. It began in 1300s, continued till your 1900s, 1800s, right? So therefore, this is how and this quest for ideas, it is also contributing to your industrial revolution, right? So this is how your Renaissance, it is operating. Okay, some of the students, they are requesting that I dictate while writing on the board so that the time will be saved. Okay, वो ठीक है, वो उसके लिए मतलब डिक्टेशन क्या कैपिटल लेटर्स में लिख रहा हूँ, ठीक है, तो ओके आई विल डिक्टेट आल्सो, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, राइट? सो देयरफॉर यू नोट दिस डाउन, दिस इज योर रिनासा एंड देन वी कैन मूव फॉरवर्ड. तो आप ये दिखा दीजिए सारा. बट दीपक, इसमें मुझे हेल्प करो. पिछले बैचेस में इशू ये था that मतलब one of the feedback came that when I am writing, if then I am speaking, then it results in confusion. ठीक है, अभी आप बोल रहे हो that when I write I should speak. So ठीक है, चलो देखते हैं जैसे भी होता है. एक यूनिट राइट कर दो बस. Has any student answered the question of Jyoti that what is more extreme phenomenon, colonialism or imperialism? I have not received any inputs. राइट कर दो पूरा. And do the students now have brief idea about what was Renaissance? उतना ही जरूरी है. राइट, लिखिए, जल्दी लिखिए भाई. स्टूडेंट से जवाब चाहिए मुझे. ज्योति ने एक सवाल पूछा है, आपको ज्योति से बिल्कुल भी सद्भावना नहीं है? किसी स्टूडेंट ने जवाब नहीं दिया अभी तक ज्योति का. इंटरेक्शन कैसे बढ़ी क्लास में? सब कुछ वर्चुअल हो गया, कोविड के बाद इंटरेक्शन करनी, मेरे को इंटरेक्शन. Okay. So now let us come back to the topic of China. So we were discussing China. So what is the brief background? So these are the reasons for the Opium War. So we were beginning with the reasons. Okay. So this is how so Britishers, they began illegal opium trade, and it soon became conflict. How did it become a conflict? Basically now gradually the youth of China, they started becoming addictive to opium. Right. And what was the impact? Impact amazing tha. For example, what was the impact on British? By the time of 1830s, the British achieved a positive balance of trade just because of opium trade. So imagine what was the level of demand for opium. ठीक है, जनता मस्त है, जनता क्या कहते हैं लेके गांजा, enjoy, huge demand. कह रहे हैं आजकल कोविड भी कम होता है if you are a opium user. ठीक है, तो ब्रिटिशर्स ने इंडियन मॉडल फॉलो किया कि इंडिया में जो शिव भक्त होते हैं वो कहते हैं मस्त अपना कहते हैं गांजा वांजा लगाते हैं, सुल्फा उल्फा मारते हैं, ठीक है, जय भोले, ठीक है, तुम भी भोला पकड़ो. ठीक है, तो इस तरीके से चीज चल रही है. तो इस तरीके से चीज चल रही है. तो क्या हो रहा है बेसिकली, व्हाट इज द इंपैक्ट? व्हाट वी आर सीइंग इज दैट बाय द टाइम ऑफ 1830s द ब्रिटिशर्स अचीव्ड पॉजिटिव बैलेंस ऑफ ट्रेड बिकॉज ऑफ इलीगल ओपियम ट्रेड. Right? But what was the impact on China? The impact on China was that the youth of China, they became addicted. Youth of China was destroyed. Because of opium. Right? So therefore this is how your things are progressing. यार अभी तक किसी ने जवाब नहीं दिया कि ज्योति के सवाल का. हर क्लास देख भी रहा है, सिर्फ ज्योति देख रही है. और वो एक और स्टूडेंट का नाम आया था, क्या था, के से एक नाम था, एक वो तिवारी जी का नाम आया था. सिर्फ 3 स्टूडेंट देख रहे हैं क्लास. क्या मतलब है? बाय 1830s ब्रिटिश अचीव्ड पॉजिटिव बैलेंस ऑफ ट्रेड बिकॉज ऑफ इलीगल ओपियम ट्रेड, बट द यूथ ऑफ चाइना वाज गेटिंग डिस्ट्रॉयड बिकॉज ऑफ ओपियम ट्रेड. सो फाइनली अराउंड द टाइम पीरियड ऑफ 1840 द चाइनीज दे क्रैक डाउन ऑन दिस इलीगल ओपियम ट्रेड एंड दे डिड देयर ओन opium, like you had your Boston Tea Party. So similarly, same thing was done. The Chinese authorities, they seized the vessels of the British and they destroyed all the opium which was there, right? And this became a cause for opium war. Chinese authorities seized and destroyed opium of the British, right? So therefore this is what they are doing, and this became a trigger. This became a trigger for the opium war. Opium war, that is the first opium war of 1840 to 1842, right? Now at this particular point of time, you will be surprised to know that the British Parliament, it sanctioned war on China. And what is the reason? What is the rationale? आप मतलब हक्के बक्के रह जाओगे आप, मैं बता रहा हूं. The British Parliament sanctioned war on China on grounds of protecting right to property of the British businesses. That opium is the property of the British businesses, and how dare the Chinese destroy the property? Where is security of property? Democracy gives security of property. So therefore, we are going to protect the right to property of these British businesses, and therefore we are going to wage war. Imagine destruction of the youth of China on one side and security of property for the British businesses on another side. Right? So therefore इस तरीके से जो है आपकी चीजें चल रही हैं. ठीक है, so basically now war will begin. Obviously in this war the Britishers, they were able to come out victorious. So now we will move on to the result of the first opium war. result of the first opium war 1840 to 42. See, इसके अंदर दो तीन चीजें आ रही हैं. The first component that is coming is the first of all the Britishers, they are capturing the territory of Hong Kong. So this is how Hong Kong became part of the British Empire. So first of all they are doing some territorial annexation. Okay. Hong Kong is what annexed. Second aspect is that China, it was opened up. देखते हैं कैसे. First of all, China, it was opened up externally, and first of all, China was forced to establish diplomatic ties with Britain by stationing of a British diplomat in China. Acha, Jyoti, answer is obviously imperialism. It is much more severe because there you are utilizing military, there you are doing political annexation. So obviously imperialism will hurt the colony much worse, in a much worse manner as compared to colonialism. Okay. So forced to establish diplomatic ties with the British by stationing of a British diplomat. What will this British diplomat will do? What do the present diplomats do? The present diplomats, they try to influence the policies of the different countries. So the same thing they will be doing. So therefore, this will give British political influence. So what is the goal here? The goal is पॉलिटिकल इन्फ्लुएंस. अच्छा, मेरे को एक और चीज बताइए, आपको रिनासा वगैरह जो हमने ब्रीफली डिस्कस किया, थोड़ा जल्दी डिस्कस किया, एक बेसिक आइडिया आपके माइंड में डेवलप हुआ? वर यू एबल टू डेवलप अ बेसिक आइडिया रिगार्डिंग रिनासा? इतना सब लिख के जो कहते हैं हमने मेहनत वगैरह किया, उसका कुछ प्रोडक्ट निकला तो वो मेरे को बताइए. अगर आपके कुछ डाउट है तो दैट ऑल्सो यू कैन मेंशन. ठीक है. फॉर मोर इन्फॉर्मेशन यू कैन गो ऑन एंड रीड द विजन आईएएस नोट्स. अभी हमारे सिलेबस के पर्सपेक्टिव से दैट मच इज इनफ, राइट. सो चाइना इज ओपनड अप externally. First, in the domain of polity, this is what is being done, and second, in the domain of economics also and trade also, some things are being done. For example, so in the domain of economy and trade also, China is opened up externally. So imagine China as a country having multiple doors, and these doors are the ports. So earlier only one door was available through which these western goods they could enter, but now other 5 more doors, they are being opened up for the British. So therefore 5 more ports are opened up for the trade. So therefore inflow of the British goods will increase, outflow of the Chinese goods will increase, the trade will increase. Right? So when 5 more ports are opened up for trade, so therefore what will happen? The trade will increase. Right? Now 5 more doors to Chinese goods, 5 more doors, they are opened up. Second aspect is favorable tariffs, they are assigned for the British import and export. What do you mean by favorable tariffs? That means less custom duties. When the custom duties they go down, the revenue of the government goes down. Okay? For example, if there is a 100 rupee product and it is being exported, then the Chinese might say that 20% export duty is there. That is, it will be 20 rupees you have to pay for, 20 rupees you have to pay to the government of China. When something is being imported, then also import duties, they can be applied. But when favorable tariffs are being implemented, that means lower tariffs are being implemented, this will decrease the revenue earned by the Chinese government. Right? So this is how your China is being opened up externally. This is how China is being opened up externally. Right? So इस तरीके से ये चीजें चल रही हैं. ठीक है. So majorly these are the things. ठीक है. Apart from this छोटे छोटे पॉइंट्स है, बाकी उतना ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, उतना ज्यादा रेलेवेंट नहीं है. दिस मच इट इज इनफ. ठीक है. लिखना है तो और लिख सकते हो. इसमें पॉलिटी के एक और मतलब पॉइंट नंबर डी आप लिख सकते हो. दैट इज ब्रिटिश सोवरेनिटी ओवर ट्रेडिंग सेंटर्स. And another small aspect was there, that is British law will apply on British citizens and not Chinese law. So this is hurting the sovereignty of China. Right? So this is how your things are operating. Rahul is asking, Rahul et al are saying to repeat all again from Renasa and they are not listening to us. There was video streaming issue. तो यार आप उसको दोबारा देखो, क्योंकि Renasa जो है ना वो अपना कोर पार्ट नहीं है सिलेबस का. Renasa जो है वो अपना सिलेबस का कोर पार्ट नहीं है. तो इतना आप मेरे लिए कर दो that after the class you go back to that particular point and you listen to it. ठीक है. Despite that, if you have any questions, then in the next class we'll be taking care of it. Right? So Renasa, it is in 1300s. Our syllabus, it begins around the time period of your 1750s. Okay. Then there is another remark, dear sir, there was severe buffering issue for 10 minutes. Students have lost the context due to that. Can we please give 10 minutes break and then resume? Okay, let us take a 10 minutes break and you can watch the video and we can resume after that. Right. So I would request the batch coordinators to figure it out, that if the students, they can go through this 10 minutes of video and then we can resume. So उस तरीके से कर लेते हैं. So let's take a 10 minutes break. Okay, welcome back students. See, with respect to Renasa, understand the basic theme. The basic theme is, when we say Chinese authorities, who are the authorities exactly? So any ruler or kingdom? Yes, there was Manchu dynasty, M-A-N-C-H-U. Manchu dynasty was there. It was ruling in China from the time period of 1640s. Coming back to the point of Renasa, Renasa was an era of darkness. Before Renasa, there was an era of darkness. No economy was there, no social mobility opportunity was there, no democracy was there, nothing was there. Life was very, very stagnant and life was enmeshed in poverty. So therefore, Renasa, it began as a movement to go back to the golden past. What was the golden past? Golden past was the ancient Roman Empire and the ancient Greek Empire. So these empires, they were very, very rich civilizations. So therefore, some of the people of that particular era, they decided that okay, let us start reading the scriptures and let us try to find out that how these ancient civilizations, they were so rich. So therefore Renaissance, it began in 14th century as a movement to read the scriptures to find out the reason for the richness of the ancient civilization. But however, this quest for improving the life of human, right? So humanism got born because of Renaissance. This quest for improving the life of humans, it soon spread to the other fields also. These people, armed with the tools of logic, reason, they now tried to solve the problems of economics, problems of politics, right? And it was a very long process. First of all, in the domain of art and culture, this movement began, and in the domain of art and culture, for example, for the first time, Jesus Christ was painted as a man. Okay, so today what you see Jesus Christ, that is a product of Renaissance. Okay, why? Because focus on man is there. Focus on otherworldliness is decreasing, and focus on man, his problem, solution to those problems, that focus is coming, right? For example, portrait mode of painting, that came into existence because of Renaissance. So what is a portrait mode of painting? Where one person is standing and someone is painting, right? So basically focus on man, his body, his life, that is increasing during the time of Renaissance. That is your art and culture. When this movement of Renaissance, it focused on the domain of religion, then it was deciphered that the Catholic form of Christianity, it has become too polluted, and it is resulting in exploitation of the masses. So therefore, around your 1500s, that is the first half of the 16th century, Martin Luther, was one of the priests of the Catholic Church in Germany, that is in Prussia, and he established what is known as Protestant churches. In the Protestant churches, all these rituals, etc., they will not be there, and focus will be on simple spirituality. So therefore, an alternative to Catholic Christianity came in the form of Protestant churches, right? And the Protestant churches, they said that no, man is not born to be unhappy, like the Catholic Church used to say, man is born to be happy, right? So therefore, and material prosperity, it is a good thing. Running after money, it is not a bad thing, because it results in prosperity. So we see that when the ideas of Renaissance, they are applied in the domain of religion, then religion itself, it is changing, and establishment of Protestantism or Protestant churches is happening. When the same ideas for improving the life of man in the domain of your science is happening, then what is coming is your scientific revolution. So therefore, people said that we find it very illogical. The church is not giving any proof of the different kind of ideas it is propagating, that earth is at the center of universe, that Jesus Christ is rotating the universe with his hand, that earth, it is flat, that sun revolves around the earth and not otherwise. So therefore, many of these scientific theories started coming up. People like Bruno, people like Galileo, people like Copernicus, these people came and they gave principles. Like for example, Newton, he gave his 3 laws of motion. So therefore, this is known as scientific revolution, whereby these new ideas in the domain of astronomy, human body was dissected, right? Blood circulation was decoded, that how does the blood circulate. So basically, in different fields of science, be it medicine, be it astronomy, right, be it physics, these new ideas are coming, and that collectively they are known as scientific revolution, which happened in 1600s and 1700s. When these very same ideas of Renaissance, they are being applied in the domain of economics, then gradually there is growth of capitalism. Okay, that is, what is capitalism? Capitalism, it means focus on profit motive, equality of opportunity to everybody to become rich, freedom of enterprise, that everyone can set up their business, everyone can go on and do trade, right? Security of property, that is, if there is a businessman who is investing his money, then there should be security of property. These kind of things, which are in essence capitalism, they became prominent. When the ideas of Renaissance, that is for improving the life of man in the domain of polity, then they found autocracy to be, very illogical. They started coming up with ideas of self-government. They started coming up with the ideas of no taxation without representation. They started coming up with ideas of rule of law, equality of men, and special privileges of the nobility of the clergy, right? So therefore, these collectively, they are known as Enlightenment thinkers or Enlightenment thoughts, and they happened in 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. So 1600s and 1700s, that is 17th century and 18th century. So therefore Renaissance is the mother of all the changes which are happening in the different walks of life, right? And that is why we say when we discuss the industrial revolution, so there we gave some contribution or some credit to Renaissance, that Renaissance has generated a quest for new ideas, right? A general spirit for curiosity, a general spirit for logic, a general belief that by following logic and reason we can solve any problem. So that is what your Renaissance is. Okay, so that is about Renaissance. I hope it was clear. Second aspect that we discussed is about the Opium War. So Manchu dynasty was the ruler at that particular point of time in China, and during the Opium War, what is the reason? The Britishers, they are facing this shortage of gold. Gold outflow is taking place from Britain to China. Why? Because China is not importing anything from the British, and China is only exporting its tea, its textile, its spices, etc. So therefore the Britishers, they began this illegal opium trade, and this illegal opium trade by the time of 1830s resulted in a positive balance of trade. Okay, it resulted in a positive. So imagine the size of this trade. However, at the same time, this was destroying the life of the Chinese youth. They were becoming addicted. So therefore the Chinese authorities, that is your Manchu dynasty, there was single ruler in China, the whole of China, it was under Manchu dynasty, unlike India whereby different kingdoms were there. So therefore Manchu dynasty, they acted against the Britishers and they destroyed the British opium. Right? When they destroyed the British opium, at this point of time, the British Parliament, it sanctioned war. Right? The British Parliament said that opium was a property of the British businesses, and that we need to ensure security of property for our businessmen. So therefore we need to avenge this defeat, and we have to extract compensation from the Chinese. So that became the reason for the first opium war. The name opium is there because destruction of opium or the illegal opium trade was at the core of this particular war. Right? As a result of the victory in the first opium war, the Britishers, they will now extract concessions from the Chinese. What is the major interest of the Britishers? The major interest, it is trade. At that point of time, trade was getting choked. Why? Because only one port of Canton, it is made available by the Chinese to the Westerners to trade. So therefore at this point of time, the Britishers, they forced the Chinese to open up 5 more ports for the Britishers. Plus they did some territorial annexation, they captured Hong Kong. So this is how Hong Kong became part of. Hong Kong is like a launch pad. If you have seen the map, then Guangzhou is here, Hong Kong it is here, right? So very close by. So once you have Hong Kong, so therefore the British, they can establish their setup in Hong Kong, and from Hong Kong they can do all the trade, right, with China, right? So therefore this is how they are, that is the reason why they are capturing Hong Kong. Apart from this, they are forcing China to establish diplomatic ties. They station a British diplomat in China. What will be the role of diplomat? In countries, in different countries, the diplomats, they have one single role, that is to politically influence the other countries. So therefore when you are stationing a British diplomat in the Chinese court, that is in the court of Manchu dynasty, that British diplomat, he will start having some kind of influence over the Chinese policy. Right? So therefore this is how they are opening up China politically, externally. They are also opening up China economically or trade wise. For example, apart from opening up 5 more ports, they also extract duty concessions. So when you study about modern Indian history, there also you study about duty free trade or dastaks. In your this history also, the Britishers, they tried to implement free trade, that is lower tariffs. When lower tariffs are there, what are tariffs? Tariffs are import duty, export duty. So therefore the Britishers would have to pay less money as tax whenever they are trading, whenever they are extracting the Chinese goods from China. Okay, so this is your first opium war. Then came the second opium war, which happened from 1856 to 1860. Now between the two opium wars, other Western powers, seeing that your Manchu dynasty, it was weak, the other European powers, they also signed similar treaties with China. Right? They also got access to even more ports. They also, established diplomatic ties with China. So between the two opium wars, other European powers, they are also establishing, they are also signing similar treaties with China. This is what is happening. Now let us come to the Second Opium War. Second Opium War, it happened from 1856 to 1860. So what are the reasons for the Second Opium War? The reason for the Second Opium War was again somewhere centered around opium. So let me just write it down, and after that we will discuss. So the first component here in your Second Opium War is that there was this pressure by the Europeans, by the French, by the British on the Chinese to legalize the opium trade, because opium trade was continuing but still it was illegal. So the first point becomes British and the French, they wanted legalization of the opium trade. Second aspect was that they wanted economic benefits. How? They wanted further economic concessions in the form of more ports, right? So they wanted more Chinese ports to be opened up, plus they wanted free trade as well. Then came the, so these are the core reasons. That's why the name, it is opium trade, because they want legalization of opium trade. Then came certain trigger points. The trigger points were that some incident happened whereby some of the British and the French officials, they were killed. Okay, in some incident they were executed by the Chinese authorities, that is the Manchu dynasty. And second incident happened whereby some missionaries, they were killed by the Chinese authorities, because the missionaries, they were out there in China, they were propagating Christianity. So therefore, दो incident हुए. One is your missionaries, some missionaries, they were killed. And second is some of the officials. Okay. So therefore, this became a trigger. Some missionaries were killed, plus some Western officials, they were executed. So basically, this became the trigger for the Second Opium War. And now Britain and France, they attacked China, that is the Manchu dynasty. And again, in this Second Opium War, there is victory for the British and the French. And next we'll talk about the results. So किस तरीके से चीजें चल रही हैं. So in the case of this result, what do we see? At this particular point of time, first of all, since the name it is Second Opium War, so opium trade, it will be legalized. That is the first component, that your opium trade, it is being legalized. Right, so your opium trade, it is being legalized. The second thing which happens is that now even further more ports will be opened up, more trade concessions will be given, they will be extracted. Right? So therefore, more ports are opened up, plus more favorable tariffs. So this is how they are economically benefiting. Third component that we see is that now China will be opened up internally. In the first Opium War, they opened up China externally. Kaise? Imagine China having doors in the form of ports, right? So therefore, China was opened up externally, meaning More ports were opened up, 5 more ports were opened up after the first Opium War, so more influx of the foreign goods will happen. Second aspect is that tariffs, they are being reduced, so therefore they will be able to more easily enter. They will become more foreign goods, they will become more affordable to the Chinese, right? So that is one of the concept. Now China, so therefore China, it was opened up externally. You can think of it like this, that in the first Opium War, China was opened up externally, and in the second Opium War, China was further opened up externally, plus it was opened up internally. That is, now the Westerners, they will start entering inside of China. So let us see how. China was opened up internally to the West. How? First example. Now, freedom of navigation was given to the Westerners in the rivers of China. That is how, through boats, the Chinese, the Western businesses, they can now enter into China. Plus, the Chinese goods, they can be extracted by these Westerners who will be traveling through these rivers. So, therefore, there is freedom of navigation. It is allowed in the rivers of China. Plus, apart from the rivers, freedom of navigation or freedom of travel, it is allowed in the inside of China. So therefore, this is how these Western businesses, businessmen, they can now enter China and they can better exploit China with the help of navigation on the Chinese rivers, with the help of freedom of travel inside of China. So they will be able to have better control over the economics of China. Their trade will improve, right? So इस तरीके से चीजें चल रही हैं. So second aspect, first aspect becomes freedom of navigation in Chinese rivers. That is one component. Second component is freedom of travel to foreigners inside of China. And this freedom of travel, it was made available not just to businesses but also to the missionaries. That is, now missionaries, they can travel and propagate Christianity. They can spread Christianity inside of China. And Chinese government was made to agree to provide guarantee of life, that is security of life, to the missionaries. Why? Because one of the trigger point is that some missionaries, they were killed. So therefore now the Chinese government is saying that, okay, we will provide security of life to the missionaries, plus missionaries, they have the right to travel and propagate Christianity inside of China. The Manchu dynasty, it guaranteed security of life of missionaries, right? So this is how what will happen. There will be import of Christianity into China, but look at the irony that on one side they are spreading this Christianity, etc., and on the other side opium trade is legalized. This is the irony of colonialism, that on one side you are saying that we are going to bring you a better religion, and on the other side you are legalizing the opium trade, right? So this is how China, it is opened up internally, and China is further opened up externally, and this is how through the 2 opium wars China is coming under the grip of the Western trade. So you can write down, meanwhile I'll answer the question. Shubham is asking, sir, when British won opium war, then why it is only annexing Hong Kong, and why British not control the whole of China economic policies as done in India? It's really strange. Yes, it is strange. Let us try to answer that particular question. Okay. So basically the question which Shubham has asked is that why the British why did the British did not politically annex China? This is the question of Shubham, that the way they colonized India, the way they did their imperialism in India, why they did not do that in case of China. So therefore there are certain differences between China and India. First component is that India, it was a fragile polity. There were multiple kingdoms in India who kept on fighting against each other. And therefore, it was very easy for the Britishers to win over these kingdoms one by another. And meanwhile, for example, when they are destroying Mysore, when they are destroying Hyder Ali, and when they are destroying Tipu Sultan by 1799, who was on the side of the British? The Marathas were on the side of the British. The Carnatic was on the side of the British. Hyderabad was on the side of the British. So in the Mysore Wars, Mysore was on one side, and on the other side they were British, Hyderabad and Marathas. Why? Because there was no unity among the Indians. So therefore India was summation of multiple kingdoms who kept on fighting with each other. And therefore it was easy for the Britishers to capture one kingdom after another. Plus, there was no unity and no sense of Indian nationalism, right? So that's why. Whereas in the case of China, you see whole of China under one strong empire called Manchu dynasty. The Mughals in India, they were weak, they were not strong, right? So by the time of after your Aurangzeb, the Mughals, they were weak. So after your 1707, when Aurangzeb is dying, after that your Mughals, they are weak, right? So therefore when they tried to threaten Aurangzeb, Aurangzeb gave them a deafening defeat around the time period of 1680s. They tried to challenge Aurangzeb, Aurangzeb ने उनकी माटी पलीत कर दी थी एकदम से. Right, so therefore, but after Aurangzeb, there was no strong central government in India. So that is one of the reasons. Second aspect is, if you compare the geography of China and the geography of India. So this aspect you can also mention that China was much bigger as compared to India. Right? So therefore it will be tough. It will be tough to this. Second aspect you can mention with respect to geography, that China is farther away as compared to India. Right? So therefore deploying your military, deploying your navy, that it can be tough. मतलब एक small, बहुत छोटा सा element बता रहे हैं, not the major element. But more importantly, what was important here is that presence of strong regional powers. In the case of India, as such, there was no strong regional power in whose backyard India lay. But China was backyard of Russia. Right? China was backyard of Russia. China was also touching the Pacific Ocean. China was also touching the Pacific Ocean, and US also had interest in the Pacific Ocean. But if you look, Russia, it shares a border with China. So there were certain strong regional powers. And for example, after 1858, or 1868, Japan also emerged as a strong regional power. So we see that there were presence of certain rivals, strong rivals, who were neighbors of China. Whereas in case of India, that situation was not there. So therefore, there are other regional powers who had interest, right? So plus your US would also have interest in the Pacific, and China is touching the Pacific. But we can mention that there was presence of strong neighbors in the case of China, like Russia and Japan. If Britain would have tried to, move too much in China, then maybe there would have been a war between Russia and Britain. And Russia is right there present, whereas Britain would have to fetch its navy, fetch its military far away from London to fight in China, and therefore chances of victory, they will be very, very less. So therefore, that also becomes a reason why the Britishers, they did not think of, like annexing the whole of China. And any which ways, by the time of 1899, we will see that the US, it will enforce its, its will. Okay, तो हम देखेंगे. So basically, between China and India, these are the reasons, right? So it is because of this particular notion that in India there was fragile polity, whereas in China there was one strong central power. So it is because of these reasons that your Britishers, they did not politically annex China, right? So multiple players, they had interest in. एक और इसमें एक चीज लिख सकते हो. So multiple powers had interest in China. They had interest plus they were present, right? They were present. Had interest means they were present in China. Whereas in case of India, over a period of time, Britain was able to ensure. Only France was interested. Before that, Portuguese, Dutch, mainly Portuguese were interested in India. They were removed. Then France was interested. They were also removed. So therefore, this is how. And plus China was too big to capture, and there is no reason. China is so big, China is so rich that all these players, they can benefit from China. So there is no issue. So this is how you can write this down, why the Britishers, they did not politically annex China, or they could not politically annex China, whereas they could politically annex India, right? So therefore, this is how your things are taking place. So you can write down the Second Opium War and then so therefore this is the result of the Second Opium War and this is the component. तो आप एक बार इधर फोकस करिए, ठीक है? बच्चे बोल रहे हैं उन्हें टाइम नहीं मिल रहा, ठीक है? आप इधर फोकस कर लिए, हम अपना टाइमर लगाते हैं, right? And we will give them 1.5 minutes for writing this down, right? And then they can, or 1 minute for writing this down, and then we can move on to the right hand side. आप यहीं पे रखिएगा जब तक मैं ना बोलूं. Hurry up, I'll give you 20 more seconds, then I'll move it to the right. अब आप write कर दीजिए. So I hope everyone has written down. I've given you decent enough time. Okay. So enough time has been given. I hope you have written. कहीं पे कोई समस्या तो नहीं होनी चाहिए. Right? So this is how these things they are progressing. After that, what happens is, look how these foreign powers, like vultures, they are trying to capture the wealth of China. 1856 to 1860, Second Opium War is going on. In the neighborhood, there is Russia. Russia knows that the Manchu dynasty, it is weak. And therefore, Russia now, in 1858, it threatens the Manchu dynasty with war. And it gives a condition that if you do not give all the territory above river Amur, then you have to face a war. So therefore, the border which we saw, right, so all of this area, एक बार projector on करिएगा. So meanwhile, write this down. I'm getting the projector done. I'll show you where is the river Amur. So the next event that takes place is 1858. Okay, so now let us focus on the map. So this you see map. This is this represents river Amur. This represents river Amur. So in 1858, when your China it is weak, it is fighting the Second Opium War from 1856 to 1860. In 1858, Russia it threatens China that if you do not give me all the territory above river Amur, then I will also attack you. Manchu dynasty knows that it cannot win such a war, so therefore it is forced to give up all of this territory to Russia. What is the intent of Russia? The intent of Russia is access to warm waters. See, Russia has always searched, and even today it is anxious for access to warm waters. Why? Because it is a northern power. And because it is a northern power, so therefore much of the oceans which are around Russia, they are ice. Whereas rest of the world, it is down south. So therefore Russia, be it the Black Sea in your Europe, or which provides access to the Mediterranean Sea, or be it this east, that is the Sea of Japan, Russia, it wants to come down so that it can do trade with the rest of the world. Why? Because it wants access to the warm waters. And what Russia does, Russia established this city of Vladivostok, and it will become its major center of trade for trading with the rest of the world, for trading with the east. So Russia wants to come south, right? That is one of the reasons. Second reason is that this Manchuria, especially South Manchuria, it was very rich in coal, and coal is very important for industrialization. So therefore what Russia does after this, so Russia, after capturing all of this territory, it also does this thing. There is this Port Arthur, so it establishes a military base, a naval base in Port Arthur. And by having this military base, it is able to project its influence in South Manchuria. The companies of Russia, they will be able to mine the coal of South Manchuria. So therefore, this South Manchuria will become a sphere of influence of Russia. What do you mean by sphere of influence? For example, you can say Nepal is sphere of influence of India. If अगर India की Nepal में चलती है, अगर इंडिया की भूटान में चलती है, then we can say that Bhutan, Nepal, they are India's sphere of influence. If the Indian businesses, they can get better contracts in Nepal, in Bhutan, in Bangladesh, then we can say that Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, they are India's sphere of influence. Like we can say that Pakistan is a Chinese sphere of influence. Kyun? Because Chinese companies plus Chinese politics, it has a role in Pakistan. So Pakistan's foreign policy, it is also influenced by China. So therefore, by establishing a naval base in Port Arthur, the Russians are able to convert this Manchuria, especially South Manchuria, into its sphere of influence, and Manchuria is very coal rich. Right? So see, the two intents or two reasons are there for Russia. First of all, they want access to the warm waters. For that, they are annexing territory. Plus, they want resources of China, especially of South Manchuria. So they are establishing a naval base here. So this is how they will project their power into South Manchuria. Okay? At this point of time, what is the year? Year is 1858. Right? तो ऐसा हम याद रखेंगे. तो यहाँ आ जाइए, यहाँ क्या हमने लिखा है? 1858, Russia threatens China with war and captured all territory above river Amur, establishing modern border with China. What are the reasons? Why did the Chinese agree? Because China was weak because of the Second Opium War, so therefore it was an opportunity for the Russians. Second, Russia wanted access to the warm waters, has always searched and desired warm waters for trade, right? So this point we have mentioned. Third point, we can also say now Russia set up military base in Port Arthur, therefore converted Manchuria into its sphere of influence. Did not annex it. Manchuria Russia का part नहीं बना, but वहाँ पे influence है. Is Nepal part of India? No. But does India has influence in Nepal? Yes. Right? So therefore that kind of a thing. Although China is also competing with India, so answer is not that clear that whether Nepal is our sphere of influence. We want it to be. That's a separate matter. So now Russia set a military base in Port Arthur, therefore converted Manchuria into its sphere of influence. So therefore this is how your Chinese resources and all of these things, they are being exploited. Okay. So therefore this is how these things are progressing. Next what happens is, तो इसको आप लिख लीजिए, मैं आपको टाइम दे देता हूँ. Please write this down. I'll give you 20 more seconds. ज़्यादा मटेरियल है नहीं, तो आप लिख लीजिए इसको. Okay, so I hope you have written. So this is the next event in the century of humiliation. ठीक है, तो इस तरीके से आप देख रहे हैं किस तरीके से चाइना के रिसोर्सेज, चाइना की टेरिटरी को कब्जा किया जा रहा है. चाइना इज लूजिंग टेरिटरी ड्यूरिंग दिस सेंचुरी ऑफ ह्यूमिलिएशन. द नेक्स्ट इवेंट व्हिच हैपेंस इज द नेक्स्ट इवेंट व्हिच कम्स इनटू ऑपरेशन It is your 1890. एक छोटा सा एक और बोल लेते हैं, चलो मेंशन कर ही देते हैं, टाइपिंग रिबेलियन. ठीक है, तो ये ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है, बट स्टिल वी विल मेंशन इट. Taiping Rebellion 1850 to 64. What it was? This was basically an internal problem of China, but it represents something. In the Taiping Rebellion, what happened is that during the Taiping Rebellion, the Chinese Christians, they wanted to overthrow Manchu dynasty and they wanted to establish their own kingdom, a kingdom which will be having Christianity as its religion. What does this tell us? This tells us that see what has happened. So high has been the missionary activity in China that now there are certain Chinese Christians who want to establish their own kingdom. They want to overthrow the Manchu dynasty. They want to establish their own kingdom which will have Christianity as its religion. Right? So this was your Taiping Rebellion. ठीक है, तो इसको लिख लेते हैं. So period of 14 years. Right? So what does this tells us? This tells us that how severe has been the missionary activity. So therefore, right? So this is a proof of quantum of missionary activities in China. ठीक है, इस तरीके से ये चीजें चल रही हैं. This Taiping Rebellion, what was the result of this rebellion? The result of this rebellion was that ultimately it failed, right? But it was not defeated by the Manchu dynasty. Like in Uttar Pradesh, you have Bahubalis. In India, you have Bahubalis. Recently, Mukhtar Ansari or someone was in news. Who was he? He's a Bahubali. Similarly, many Bahubalis are there in India. So therefore, what are these Bahubalis? These are basically warlords. Like when we discussed the European history, there we talked about what? There we talked about nobles. Nobles who were having control over military. Right? That is there. When you discuss the modern Indian history, there you talk about Maratha Sardars. Like Bhosle of Nagpur, Scindia of Gwalior, Gaikwad of Baroda. Right? और कौन था? Gaikwad of Baroda, Bhosle of Nagpur, ठीक है? Scindia of Gwalior and Holkar of Indore. Right. So who are they? They were the Maratha Sardars. They were the Maratha Sardars. So basically, what are these? These are warlords. So this Taiping Rebellion, it was not defeated by the Manchu dynasty. Rather, Manchu dynasty had to take help of these warlords. So Taiping Rebellion was defeated, but with help of warlords. What does it represent? It represents कि Manchu dynasty कितना weak हो गया है. कहाँ पे तो Manchu dynasty was strong, but after the first Opium War, after the second Opium War, ultimately Manchu dynasty is becoming so weak that it has to take help of non-state actors, and this increased the confidence of warlords. Now warlords, they were in this talk, in this firak, कि कब मंचू डायनेस्टी का पतन हो और कब हम पावर में आ जाएं. Right? Now the Manchu dynasty, now the warlords, their confidence increased that Manchu dynasty is weak. They have to take our help to defeat the Taiping Rebellion. So therefore, what is happening? Therefore, loss of prestige of Manchu dynasty and increase in power of the warlords. This is what is happening. This is the impact. Okay, now you note it down. Meanwhile, I'll take a question from Shraddha. Shraddha is asking, Sir, China was too big, but only one dynasty ruling there. So if this is not put easy way to influence local rulers and gain more profits, only single monarch could not afford to make everyone comply with the law. So this might be their weakness, but not so. Why? The simple point is that, I mean, like India was also big, China was also big, China was just bigger. And Manchu dynasty had been able to establish its rule over the whole of China. They were, as such, there were no local, kings were not there. There was this single, like in case of India, by the time period of your 1700s, what do you have? You had Maratha Empire separately, you had Mysore separately. South India was not under the control of the Mughals. But that was not the situation in China. In whole of China, there was one single dynasty, and this dynasty was very, very rich. China was the richest economy of the world. China was the richest economy of the world before industrialization happened in Britain. Right? Number one economy of the world. So this dynasty, it had the resources and it was powerful enough to control whole of China. Right? When we are talking from the perspective of Britain, then we are saying that China is also, if we are comparing India and China, and if we are saying that why the Chinese, why the Britishers, they did not attempt to control whole of China. So one small factor, one additional factor comes that China is too big. So the challenge is also too big. Well, that is one small component, right? So that is how we approach this particular question. Okay. लिखो लिखो. Okay, so this is your typing rebellion and this is the impact. श्रद्धा ने क्वेश्चन पूछ लिया तो बताना पड़ा ना पूर्वी, क्या करें? मुझे साइड हो जाना चाहिए था. ठीक है, चलो अब नेक्स्ट आते हैं. व्हाट इज नेक्स्ट? द नेक्स्ट इवेंट दैट टेक्स प्लेस इज 1895 Sino-Japanese War. Sino means China and Japan means Japan. And in this war, what happens? Let us take a look. So next component is your Sino-Japanese War or first Sino-Japanese War. First Sino-Japanese War happens in 1894-1895. Okay. Now, what is the reason for this war? The reason for this war is Korea. If you look at the map, so this is your Korea. Korea at that point of time was part of China. Okay. China had Korea under its control. Now, Japan, when it wants to expand, so what is the backyard of Japan? This is the backyard of Japan. So Japan will expand in this direction. Japan will try to move its power in this direction, right? Ab yahan pe to Russia hai, so that is a problem. So, but first pedestal, it is your Korea, right? So therefore, this war, first Sino-Japanese War, it was fought over Korea. The Japanese, they wanted to increase their influence in the backyard. Okay. Also here it is your Taiwan. So therefore, isko bhi dhyan mein rakhenge. So what is the reason for this first Sino-Japanese War? The Manchu dynasty is weak and Japan, it wants to increase its influence in Korea. So what is the reason? So it was fought over Korea, which then was under China. Okay, so that is the one aspect. That is the core reason. What can be the long-term reasons? Can you think of certain long-term reasons? I will tell you the long-term reasons. थोड़ा सा time आज class में ज़्यादा लग गया. Otherwise, I would have asked you. ठीक है. So why China is called Sino? Search कर लो यार. अब Indian को भारतीय क्यों बोलते हैं? ठीक है. तो इंडियंस को ओरिएंटल्स क्यों बोलते हैं? तो ऐसा इसमें कोई ज़्यादा कॉन्सेप्ट वाला चीज़ नहीं. Right. So reason fought over Korea, which was then under China. What can be the long-term reasons? Japan, it was undergoing industrialization after 1868, right? And the long-term strategy of Japan, which would be revealed later, right? Long-term strategy of Japan would be that first of all, Japan wants resources. Its own territory, it is very small. So therefore, if it is able to get Korea out of the grips of China, then it will be able to get access to minerals and other wealth, right? So therefore, that is one of the aspects. So background you can write down. So what we have written? We have written this first Sino-Japanese war, it was fought over Korea, which was then under China. Japan was going through industrialization while its own territory was small. Therefore, it wanted access to new sources of raw material and export markets, right? So this part we have discussed the importance of the industrial revolution in the last class. So therefore, this is how your things are going on. What is the result? The result is that Japan, it is able to defeat China. Manchu dynasty, it is weak, and now even an Asian country is able to take benefit of this weakness, and Japan is able to defeat China. Why is Japan able to defeat China? Japan is able to defeat China because of industrialization. If your country has industrialized, you will be able to produce arms, ammunition, you will be able to have a modern military, right? So basically industrialization, especially the heavy industry, it assists you in speedily developing weapons, ammunition, trucks, tanks, whatever, right? So therefore, the जो भी military के लिए चाहिए होता है, if you are having a strong heavy industry, you would be able to have a strong military. So why such a small country like Japan was able to defeat China? Because of its industrialization. After winning, what does the Japanese do? First of all, the Japanese, they make Korea independent. Can any student answer me, why make Korea independent? Why not annex Korea? Let us see how many students are able to answer this, right? That why Korea is made independent and it is not annexed. They also annexed Taiwan and Senkaku Islands. Where are Senkaku Islands? When you study your current affairs, then you will read about Senkaku Islands. Senkaku Islands, they are in the East China Sea. What is the East China Sea? It is the Sea of Japan. And today it is a dispute between China and Japan. Some answers have come. Annexing would have been costly, difficult to control remotely, water in between, buffer zone nahi. Geopolitics comes into play. Never forget geopolitics. And what is the geopolitics? The geography plus the presence of different other powers. Around the time period of 1895, around the time, no rebellion for support from people. The issue here is, look, Interconnection, it is important. In 1858, what has happened? In 1858, Russia has reached here. All of this, it is Russia, right? And after 1858, in the Port Arthur also, your Russia, it is present. So therefore, you'd see this particular area, Russia, it is present. This particular area, Russia, it is present, right? Now, if Japan, it moves ahead, but it is moving cautiously. It is making Korea independent. If it would have thought of annexing the Korea right away, then the Russians, they would have felt threatened because of this advance of the Japanese. The Russians would have felt threatened with respect to their position in South Manchuria, and therefore it could have triggered a war between Russia and Japan. And Japan at that particular point of time did not have the confidence that they will be able to defeat Russia. Because in late 1800s, Russia was also trying for industrialization, and Japan, since 1868, it is trying for industrialization. So therefore, that kind of confidence was not there. So basically, what is the geopolitics? This Korea, so basically Japan, it is moving cautiously. Therefore, in the first step, it makes Korea independent. If it had annexed Korea, it could have triggered anxiety of Russians, and Russians, they could have attacked from both of these sides. They could have made Japanese go away from Korea. So therefore, presence of Russia, it deserts for it acts like a resistance for the Japanese. So they will not move ahead against Korea properly till the point of time Russia is present here. So therefore, that is the reason. So Korea made independent. So why? So basically the context is so did not annex because of presence of Russia in the neighborhood, right? So Russia is present. This is how your international foreign policy works, right? They are, however, able to annex Taiwan. They have good relationship with Britain, right? They are able to annex these Senkaku Islands, which are there in the East Sea of Japan or the East China Sea. So therefore, even a country like Japan is able to do imperialism against China. Okay? So this is how your things are. So please note this down. Then we will talk about it more, that how these things are progressing. Yes, Manchurian cuisine is also related to Manchuria. Right? So can we say what China does now, it's type of revenge? Yes, China is taking revenge of century of humiliation. China is saying that I am doing what the Europeans did when they had the time. So therefore, why should I not do what the Europeans did? Right? So it is China's time. Now you talk about freedom of navigation. Now you talk about democracy. What about the 1800s? What about the 1900s? So it is hypocrisy. It is plain hypocrisy, right? So therefore, China is right. So China is indeed taking the revenge, right? So therefore, this is how your first Sino-Japanese war, it is taking place. The next event which happens is Boxer Rebellion in 1899. What is this Boxer Rebellion? एक इसका गूगल पे सर्च कर लेना, why it is called Boxer Rebellion, बस Boxer Rebellion बोलते हैं, ठीक है? अभी मेरे को ध्यान नहीं आ रहा कि Boxer Rebellion बोलते हैं. Sir, when did IR began in China? IR will begin in China when there is, see, logic follow karo. Kya logic hai? When will a country be able to do industrialization? A country will be able to do industrialization if it has control over its economic policies, when it has control over its resources. When China's resources, they are being exploited by these foreign powers, then how China will be able to use those resources to generate economic benefits? It will not be able to. So therefore, until unless colonialism is there, industrialization cannot happen. That is why in India, industrialization did not happen until your 1947, right? And that is why in China, industrialization will not take place until your 1949. So therefore, it is a gradual one. So whenever, that is why industrialization did not happen in Africa until they began getting independence until your 1957. And it is a long process. It is now that certain African countries, they are gradually industrializing. Specifically in the case of China, it was in 1970s that proper industrialization began under Deng Xiaoping. Okay, so therefore, that is the. Now let us come to 1899 Boxer Rebellion. Right. So what is this Boxer Rebellion? In this Boxer Rebellion, the Chinese youth, they are coming out on a revolt. So let us see what they are revolting against, and let us also see why they are revolting. So BG, it is your background. So what we have written, what is the background? This is the background. So actually, with the, as we have mentioned earlier also, along with the missionaries came the Western education. So in India also, for example, today we are studying Western education. The East India Company, it introduced the Western education into India. So therefore, there was this civilization project by these Western powers. They wanted to bring their religion to the East. They wanted to bring their Western education to the East. Now this Western education, it is based on the ideas of democracy. The Western education, it champions democracy. The Western education, it glorifies the Western world, and they try to propagate that what is good with the Western world. And when they try to talk about what is good with the Western world, they talk about democracy, they talk about self-government, they talk about rule of law, and all of these things. They also talk about nationalism, right? So as a result, what happens is that these Chinese youth, they started getting influenced by the ideas of nationalism, by the ideas of democracy. And therefore, by the time of 1899, such situation was there that these Western education influenced, that these Western educated Chinese youth, they wanted democracy in China, plus they wanted an end of foreign interference in China. That is the spirit of nationalism, it is in operation. Right? The spirit of nationalism, it is in operation. Also, by the time of 1899, China was divided into different spheres of influence. Meaning, the foreign powers, they have not annexed the different areas, but ऐसा कुछ हो गया कि इस एरिया में फ्रांस की चलती है, इस एरिया में जो पोर्ट्स हैं वहां पे फ्रांस का दबदबा है, फ्रांस यूज करता है. That in this area, French are the dominant power. The ports of this area, they are under the control of the French. French trade takes place. In that particular area, the Britishers are the dominant power, and the trade from all of that area is with the Britishers. In that particular area, the US, it is a dominant power. In that particular area, the Japanese are a dominant power. In that particular area, Russians are the dominant power. Meaning, China was divided into spheres of influences of respective foreign powers. And there was this real fear among the hearts of the Chinese youth that over a period of time, these spheres of influences, they will get converted into colonies. That is, over a period of time, these foreign powers may annex those respective spheres of influence, and therefore it will result in territorial disintegration of China. China ka bandarbat ho jayega among different European powers. So therefore, what is happening is this: by 1899, China was divided into different spheres of influences, each sphere having domination of a foreign power. Therefore, Chinese youth feared annexation of these spheres of influences by respective foreign powers, leading to territorial disintegration of China. And it is in this context that in 1899, the Chinese youth revolted against whom? Against the foreign powers. What was the result? The foreign powers, they collectively crushed the nationalism of the Chinese youth. And they also made, ultimately by crushing it, they also made the Chinese queen to pay huge amount of compensation. Plus now they extracted the right to station their troops inside China. So therefore, this is how humiliation of China is happening. When the Chinese youth is showing their nationalism, the Western powers are slapping them on their face and they are saying that we are here to stay. We are here to exploit you. Right? So therefore, what is the result? So basically, what is happening? The Chinese youth revolted against foreign powers. What is the result? So the result is Britain, France, Germany, US, Japan. Their joint army crushed the rebellion. See how all the different colonial powers कैसे vultures की तरह China के ऊपर चढ़ गए, right? So their joint army crushed the rebellion. Plus they made the queen to pay huge amount of compensation. Compensation for what? Because they are opposing colonialism, right? Compensation what? Because of loss of property, right? Because of loss of lives of the foreigners. Plus they got right to station troops in China so that again, if the Chinese youth, they try to do some similar kind of thing, then it can be readily crushed, right? This was there. However, US got a little agitated. US was a thorough businessman, and US simply just wanted, US was following a policy of isolation. Since 1823, there was this Monroe Doctrine, as a result of which, US was saying that I'm going to follow a policy of isolation. I do not want to be part of European conflicts. I want to engage with the rest of the world, but only in the domain of economics. That is your US policy of isolation. Anyways, we will discuss more about it later on. Right, so now what happens is, third result is very important result, and it has answer to that one question which a student asked, that why China was not politically annexed. I did not mention it at that point of time because it was not the right time. And then a second question which we have written at the beginning of the class, that what is international colony, right, and how China became an international colony. So basically, third development which is taking place is, so what we are saying is that the US, it established open door policy in China, and rest of the powers, they agreed. What is this open door policy? It basically implied an end of the spheres of influences. That is, now whole of China, it is open for trade and investment to all the powers. So अब ऐसा नहीं होगा that this area is of France, that area is under the domination of British, that area is under the domination of the Russians, etc., etc. उस तरीके से नहीं होगा. And what will happen is that now whole of China is available, it is open for businesses of all the foreign countries. This is known as open door policy. That means all doors to China, they are open to everyone. If France want to enter through this door, their businesses can enter. If France want to enter from that door, they can enter. That is, no European power or no Western power will say that this is my area, this is my area. US said, area kutto ka hota hai. Area is of dogs, right? And we are not dogs, we are tigers, right? So therefore, it implied an end of spheres of influences. That is, now whole of China, it is available for trade and investment to all the foreign powers. इसका फायदा क्या होगा? The benefit will be the anxiety among the Chinese youth that because of the spheres of influences, we will get partitioned among the different European powers. That anxiety, it is handled. So fear of partitioning of China will be laid to rest, and therefore chances of another rebellion would decrease. So therefore, this is the rationale for the US. Second aspect is, what is the result or what is the impact? China became an international colony. That is colonialism by all foreign powers and not by any one power. Meaning, for example, you can say that India was a national colony. You can say that India was a national colony of Britain. You can say that Indonesia was a national colony of Dutch. You can say that Algeria in North Africa was a national colony of France. You can say Morocco was a national colony of France. Meaning, only France will exploit Morocco. Only France will exploit Algeria. Only Britain will exploit India. So therefore, that is what you mean by colony. So when we usually say colony, so we do not mention the word national, but it basically means national colony. What is international colony? Everyone will exploit China. Everyone will get equal opportunity to exploit China. So therefore, is colonialism there in China? Yes. But is imperialism or is political annexation there in China? No. So therefore, what is the result? This is one of the results, and second result is China escaped political annexation. China escaped political annexation. Which countries did not escape? The African countries could not escape political annexation. India could not escape political annexation. Indonesia could not escape political annexation. Most of the other colonies, they could not escape colonial annexation, political annexation, but China escaped political annexation. Why? Because US is implementing open door policies. Right? Why? Because US did not want another rebellion, because law and order stability is needed for good business. So therefore, this is how your China, it is escaping political annexation because of the US. And why US is doing so? Because law and order stability is good for business and US wants this thing. Right? So then trade benefits of colonial powers already there will not suffer. Why they will suffer? Everyone is able to have, everyone is able to trade on good terms or on profitable terms with the whole of China. तो उससे क्या problem है? Competition will be there between the companies, right? ठीक है, तो इस तरीके से जो है जो यूएस है उसने एस्टैब्लिश किया इंटरनेशनल कॉलोनी, एंड दिस इज व्हाई चाइना इज एस्केपिंग पॉलिटिकल एनेक्सेशन. ठीक है, तो इस तरीके से चीजें चल रही हैं. सो अगेन व्हाट डू वी सी? व्हाट इज द पनिशमेंट हियर? पनिशमेंट हियर इज दैट सी नेशनलिज्म, व्हेन द चाइनीज यूथ दे आर agitating against the foreign interference, they are being punished. So that is the importance of Boxer Rebellion, that when the Chinese youth, they are standing up for their country, they are being punished, and rather they are being made to pay compensation. The queen is being made to pay compensation. So this is how these things are happening. How all other countries agreed to the US policy? So basically, by the time of this 1900, US had become the #1 economic power of the world. By time of 1900, the US had become the #1 economic power of the world. And second aspect is there, what US is saying is good for business, because Boxer Rebellion kind of things, if they happen, then China's law and order stability will not be there, and therefore it will not be possible for these European powers, for these Western powers to do business. Law and order stability is very important for business. Why in India open door policy was not implemented? Why? Because simple point is that in case of India, there was one power, that is Britain. So if in the case of India, Britain है. अब Britain थोड़ी चाहेगा कि open door policy हो जाए. So जब तक ऐसा हो सकता है कि open door policy ना हो, तब तक वैसा particular जो power है वो चाहेगी कि मतलब वो बेरा ही फीफडम रहे. ब्रिटेन तो यही चाहेगा ना कि इंडिया को बस मैं ही एक्सप्लॉइट करूं, राइट? अब यहां पे चाइना में बिकॉज मल्टीपल प्लेयर्स आर प्रेजेंट, राइट, यूएस इज प्रेजेंट, सो देयरफॉर सिंस नो वन पावर कैन कंट्रोल द होल ऑफ चाइना, सो दे आर डिसाइडिंग दैट ओके लेट अस मेक इट एन इंटरनेशनल कॉलोनी. ठीक है, सो दिस इज हाउ योर थिंग्स आर. व्हाई यूएस डिड नॉट ट्रेड विद इंडिया? सी, इंडिया इज अ कॉलोनी ऑफ ब्रिटेन, so therefore it will be the British businesses who will be able to exploit India. That is, who will be able to, British businesses will be able to have a special economic relationship with India. right? So that is the reason. And that is why US favored independence of India. Because if India becomes independent, after that what will happen? After that if India becomes independent, then after that your US businesses, they will also be able to do business with India. Okay. Why US did not come to India? US did not come to India. US did not come to many other places because of its policy of isolation. So we'll be discussing that when we discuss the US imperialism. Okay. So I've given you enough time. Now let's move forward. लेफ्ट वाला पोर्शन लिख लिया आपने? This one, Boxer Rebellion, left वाला part. ये वाला हो गया है? Okay. So this is how things are progressing. Now see what happens. The next event which comes is 1904-1905 Russo-Japanese War. Right? 1904-1905 Russo-Japanese War. In this war, what is happening? A war is happening between Russia and Japan. Right? And to the shock of the whole world, Japan was able to defeat Russia. To the shock of the whole world, Japan was able to defeat Russia. So let us look what were the reason for the war, why Japan was able to defeat Russia, and what was its impact. So what is the reason? Reason is Japan wanted to remove Russia from Manchuria. Manchuria, which was sphere of influence, SOI is sphere of influence of Russia since 1858. So remember, in 1858, Russia took over territory above River Amur, and after that, it established a naval base in Port Arthur, converted Manchuria into its sphere of influence, and therefore was able to use the coal of Manchuria. So therefore, Japan, it wanted resources of Manchuria, and for that, it wants to get rid of Russia from Manchuria. That is, it wants to get rid of Russia from Port Arthur, from Liaotung Peninsula. So this is the reason. What is the result? Result is Japan is able to defeat, or simply Japan won. Japan won. To the shock and surprise of the whole world, Japan won. Why do you think Japan was able to win? Any answers? Why Japan was able to win this particular war? Why would Japan be able to win this particular war? काम की बात पे तो जवाब आता नहीं आपको. दो जवाब. आईआर, इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन. वेरी गुड. ठीक है. निंजाज नहीं आ रहे पांडे जी. यहां पे निंजा नहीं काम कर रहे, समुराई नहीं काम कर रहे, कुछ और काम कर रहा है. इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन काम कर रहा. पांडे जी, रिजल्ट जापान वन बिकॉज ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन. और वो किस लिए? अब एक और सवाल आता है. क्या सवाल आता है? सवाल ये आता है, देन इफ जापान वन बिकॉज ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन, देन व्हाई in 1895 Japan was fearing Russia? Why? Because Japanese industrialization, it had begun. So Japan won. इसके reasons क्या है? Because of maturity in industrialization. So Japan won. इसका aspect क्या है? See, 1868 onwards there was industrialization in Japan. When in 1895 it is defeating China, then 27 odd years of industrialization has taken place. But by the time of 1905, it is able to get one additional decade. So by 1905, Japan is getting the confidence that now it can defeat Russia. By 1905, Japan economy was industrialized and Japan had strong enough army to take on Russia. Plus, third component here is that we mentioned in your industrial revolution also that some reforms were undertaken around the time period of 1880s, but otherwise Russian economy was largely agrarian. Russian economy was largely agrarian until your 1914. So some improvement did take place, but otherwise Russia was late to industrialize. Russia lagged behind in industrialization. IR, it stands for industrialization. So therefore, what had happened is this. This has happened. It is not that an Asian country has defeated a European country. This has happened that an industrialized country has defeated a non-industrialized country. And non-industrialized country here was Russia and Japan. But the whole was shocked and surprised that the myth of European superiority was ended. The myth of European invincibility was ended. This boosted nationalism in colonies. Why? Because an Asian power is defeating a European power, right? So therefore, this is how these things are taking place. Okay? Yes, SOI, it means sphere of influence. Okay. Otherwise, what are the results? Now Russians, they are removed from Port Arthur, right? And Manchuria now becomes a sphere of influence of Japan. Right? So therefore, as a result, what will happen? Therefore, Japanese industrialization will further get a boost, or Japanese industrial economy will benefit. Okay? Because Manchuria, it is coal rich. With Russia gone, now they can move ahead in Korea. And now they convert Korea into their protectorate. So therefore, in 1905, Korea, it is converted into protectorate. And what is a protectorate? That is its foreign policy, its military will be under the control of Japan. Why it is happening now? Because now there is no more a threat of Russia, right? But SOIs were ended in 1899. Yes, SOIs, they were ended in 1899, but because of the presence of मतलब ये ईस्ट वाले पार्ट में उतना नहीं आया था. जो SOIs वाला पार्ट था वो ईस्ट वाले पार्ट में उतना नहीं आया था, because this is the backyard of Japan. This is the backyard of Japan. So therefore यहाँ पे चल रहा है, एक्चुअली यहाँ पे बंदर बाट चल रहा है. बंदर बाट क्या चल रहा है, बड़ी दुख की बात है. There was actually a secret agreement between US and Japan. There was a secret agreement between US and Japan, whereby US said that I will pressurize Russia to agree to the territorial gains you are seeking, but in return, Japan, you allow US companies into the areas which are under your influence. So there was this murky kind of a secret agreement which was there between the US and the Japan, right? So that is the reason for this particular thing. Apart from this, what is happening? The Sakhalin Islands, they are very, very oil rich. Today, ONGC Videsh Limited, it is having its operation in the Sakhalin Islands. So half of the Sakhalin Islands, they were taken over. They were of Russia. They were taken over by Japan. Right? So Russia lost half of Sakhalin Islands to Japan, and these Sakhalin Islands, they are oil rich. Right? आज तक oil rich है, ठीक है? So therefore, this is how your Russia, it is losing its control over Manchuria, and your Russia is losing its control over Manchuria, plus your Russia is also losing half of Sakhalin Islands. Right? So इस तरीके से ये चीजें चल रही हैं, ठीक है? So this is how your things are progressing. So Korea, it is, so basically now what is the proof, what is happening here? Two foreign powers are fighting and China is simply watching. Two foreign powers are fighting that who will exploit China, who will loot China, and China can simply just watch. China cannot do anything, right? So therefore इस तरीके से चल रहा है, ठीक है? So ये है, this is your 1904-1905 रूसो-जापानीज वॉर. तो आज थोड़ा सा वो बफरिंग की वजह से जो है हमारा थोड़ा सा टाइम निकल गया, प्लस रेनासा वगैरह डिस्कस करने की वजह से थोड़ा टाइम और निकल गया colonial imperials. Anyways, Trans-Siberian Railways, they were constructed in late 1880s. So 1870, 1880s में Trans-Siberian Railways, they were constructed, yes, up to Manchuria. ठीक है? So yes, that is there. This is triggered Russian Revolution. अरे हाँ, एक अच्छा पॉइंट तो आपने बोला ही, मैं सोचा बाद में बोलूंगा, बट आपने, ये बड़ा इंटेलिजेंट बच्चा है जो भी ये है, ये जो शोभित है, ठीक है? सो शोभित बहुत ही अमेजिंग टाइप के बच्चे हैं. तो एक और इंपैक्ट यहाँ पे हम ऐड कर सकते हैं, मैं सोचा बाद में ऐड करूंगा, बट आपने बोला है. सो बेसिकली व्हाट हैपेंस, दिस थिंग यू रिमेंबर, वॉर्स आर कॉस्टली, and because of nationalism दो धारी तलवार है. As I mentioned earlier also, if today India fights a war with Pakistan and India wins, Modi ji will stay in power forever. But if India fights a war with Pakistan and India loses, Modi ji will go out of power. That is how your nationalism operates. So 2-3 things are there. Basically, this triggered Russian Revolution of your 1905. This is the first Russian Revolution of 1905. What is the reason? So reason is, first of all, so क्या है, सिंपल है, wars are costly and therefore hurt the Russian economy. War loss meant no gains in economy post war, because at times if you are able to win a war, after that if you are able to get new territory, then like Napoleon did, so उससे फायदा तो हुआ नहीं, because of war loss हो गया, तो basically they lost, plus they lost Manchuria also now, plus they are losing Sakhalin Islands also, right? So उस तरीके से देखा जाए तो इनका लॉस हो रहा है economically. So economy deteriorated. When economy, good economics is good politics, bad economics is bad politics. Plus your war loss, it meant decrease in pride, prestige of the Tsar, and therefore this triggered the Russian Revolution. So more on this will come when we discuss the Russian Revolution. So thank you for your time. God bless you. In the next class, we will complete colonialism in China, and we will also complete colonialism in Africa. So we will devote our next class to that, right? So thank you for it. And finally, we will also be summarizing all of these things. तो अभी बहुत सारे events आ गए हैं. All of these things they will be summarized in a sufficient manner for you. ठीक है, at the end of the colonialism in China.